if everything is already known by God Almighty, if the eternal script of your life has been written before your first breath, if nothing in this fleeting world truly belongs to you, then what is the point of prayer? This question has haunted saints and seekers alike. It is not a question born merely from philosophy, but from the restlessness of the heart. A soul standing at the edge of midnight silence whispers, if my life is not mine, if my soul is not mine, if even my will is not mine, then what power does my prayer hold? It is not the language of logic that asks this question, but the cry of the heart, the trembling of the soul when it feels both its littleness and its longing. For in the quiet chambers of the night, when all the noise of the world has stilled, this question does not come clothed in arguments. It comes clothed in yearning. And what is the answer? It is not delivered in cold reasoning or the syllables of debate. It comes as experience. It arrives as unveiling. It descends as intimacy with the divine. The answer is not a sentence to memorize, but a state to taste. It is not something you prove, but something you live. When the seeker asks, what is the point of prayer? The saints respond not with proof but with presence. They say, stand before him and see, open your palms and wait. Pour your silence into his silence and watch what happens to you. Prayer, then, is not a riddle to solve but a mystery to enter. It is not a concept but a meeting. And in that meeting, the question itself dissolves, not because it has been answered, but because the soul no longer needs an answer. According to Ibn Arabi, prayer is never about informing God of something he does not already know. How could the one who shaped you in the darkness of the womb, who knows the secrets of your thoughts before they form on your tongue, require your reminder? Prayer is not a bulletin to heaven. It is not an update to the all-knowing, nor is prayer a negotiation. It is not a bargain struck between a needy servant and a generous king, as though your eloquence could convince him to give what he has not already decreed. It is not a divine shopping list, where you line up requests hoping each will be checked off in turn. Prayer, Ibn Arabi tells us, is remembrance. It is the act of emptying yourself of yourself. It is the dissolving of the ego in the awareness of the divine. To pray is to stand before God, and in that presence forget who you are. When you step into prayer with the ego intact, you carry an invisible idol with you. Your words become heavy with I want, I need, I deserve. And in this, prayer becomes nothing more than a religiously dressed version of desire. It is not yet prayer. It is self-expression wearing the mask of devotion. True prayer begins at the moment of surrender. It begins when the insistence falls away and the will bows down. It is when the servant stops declaring and starts dissolving. The one who prays does not bring his ego into the conversation. Instead, he brings only his emptiness. Prayer is not the pouring of desire into the heavens, but the emptying of desire before the throne of the eternal. It is not standing tall. It is falling silent. It is not about what you want, but about knowing before whom you stand. In that sacred encounter, the self softens, melts, disappears. And the heart begins to understand that prayer is less about speaking and more about listening. It is less about filling the air with words and more about making space for the divine to echo through you. This is Ibn Arabi's vision of prayer, not a demand, not a transaction, but remembrance. Not self-assertion, but self-erasure. Not the voice of the ego, but the hush of the soul standing before the infinite. The modern mind, restless and hurried, often treats prayer as a tool. It imagines prayer as a lever to pull, a switch to flip, a device to operate. If I ask for this, I will get it. If I achieve that, I will be satisfied. In this mentality, prayer becomes a transaction, a contract between the mortal and the eternal, an exchange between merchant and buyer. But this view reduces the sacred to the mechanical. It shrinks the vast mystery of prayer into the narrow corridors of demand and supply. It turns the eternal conversation into nothing more than a business deal. And when the result does not come, disappointment follows. I prayed, but I did not receive, so what use is prayer? This is where Sufism steps in with a different light. The mystics remind us that prayer is not giving God your desires, it is giving yourself back to Him. Prayer is not placing your demands before the throne, it is placing your soul in His hands. When you raise your hands in supplication, you are not changing what is written in destiny. You are changing the one who raises those hands. You are changing yourself. This is why the saints say prayer does not alter the decree, but it awakens you to the decree. The written script of destiny does not bend at your words, but your heart bends toward acceptance, patience, and surrender. Prayer does not move the pen of God, but it softens the heart of man. And when the heart softens, the same destiny that once felt heavy begins to unfold as mercy. In this way, prayer is not a tool for the fulfillment of desire. It is the unveiling of truth within you. Prayer is not about aligning the heavens to your will. It is about aligning your soul to the will of the one who holds the heavens. This is the misunderstanding of prayer, to think it is a transaction. The truth is, deeper prayer is transformation. Ibn Arabi opens a window into the secret of prayer. He tells us that when the servant prays, he does not invent the words. He does not shape them from his own imagination. Rather, he only utters what God has already willed. Prayer, then, is not your invention. It is His inspiration. It is not your word. It is His word placed upon your tongue. You are not the author of prayer, but the bearer of it. You are not the composer, but the instrument through which it flows. This is why prayer is not a request, but a trust. When you pray, you are entrusted with words that have been written for you from eternity. It is as though the divine has placed a key in your hand, and that key is not meant to unlock the heavens, for they were never locked, but to unlock your own heart. Listen carefully to the tone of Ibn Arabi's supplications. They are not demands, not bargains, not the anxious rhythm of give me this and grant me that. Instead, they resound like waves of surrender washing upon the shore of eternity. Make me among those who know you. Do not leave me to myself. Erase me in you. Bring me into being in you. These are not statements of will, they are confessions of surrender. They are not the voice of insistence, but the whisper of self-emptying. True supplication is not about multiplying your desires, but about diminishing them until nothing remains but God. It is not about convincing Him to act. It is about dissolving yourself so that His will becomes your will, His voice becomes your voice, His breath becomes your breath. At this depth, the servant no longer prays for outcomes. He prays for transformation. He no longer seeks possession, he seeks dissolution. He no longer clings, he lets go. This is the secret of true supplication. Not that you change the world outside, but that you are changed inside. Not that you bring God into your story, but that you step into His. At this point, a hidden truth unveils itself. You no longer direct the prayer. The prayer begins to direct you. What you once thought was born from your need is in reality shaping your need. The prayer is older than you, deeper than you, and more truthful than the desires you once carried. In the beginning, you pray because you feel hungry, desperate, incomplete. You pray because you think something is missing in your life. Yet as prayer deepens, you begin to realize that it was never about filling a gap in the outer world. It was always about shaping the inner world. True prayer is when the servant vanishes, and what remains is the breath of God moving through the hollow of your being. Prayer becomes less of your speech and more of His echo. It is no longer your petition, but His remembrance. Sometimes prayer emerges as words. Sometimes it is only silence. But this silence is not emptiness, it is fullness. It is not the silence of despair, but the silence of surrender. In that silence, the soul leans against the eternal and no longer struggles to be heard, because it knows it has always been heard. And what happens to the heart in this silence? It softens, it melts, it becomes a vessel large enough to hold what destiny pours into it. The decree does not change, but the heart does. And in that change, destiny is experienced as wisdom, as compassion, as guidance. When prayer transforms you, your questions dissolve. You stop asking, "Will this happen?" And instead you whisper, "Let me be ready for whatever you will." You stop demanding, "Why not now?" And instead you breathe, "Whenever you know best." This is not weakness. This is strength. The strength of surrender, the courage of letting go, the bravery of becoming small before the infinite. And in that moment, you discover that prayer was never about bending heaven to your desires. It was about bending your soul toward heaven. But then comes the question, persistent and sharp: if prayer does not change destiny, then what is its purpose? Ibn Arabi answers with clarity: the purpose of prayer is not to twist the hand of heaven, not to bend the eternal decree toward your wishes. The purpose of prayer is awakening. It is to open the servant to the reality that already surrounds him. When you pray, you are not altering what is written. You are unveiling what was written. You are not changing God's knowledge. You are being drawn nearer to the truth He has prepared for you since before time began. Prayer, then, is not about altering reality, but about revealing it. It is like polishing a mirror. The image was always there, but your eyes were clouded. Through prayer, the dust of self, the fog of ego, the smoke of illusion begins to clear. And when it clears, you see what has always been. This is why Ibn Arabi insists prayer is not yours as much as you think. You did not choose it alone. You were chosen for it. You were brought to prayer because the Eternal had prepared you for that moment. The very act of kneeling, the very words on your tongue, are themselves decreed. Prayer is destiny unfolding within you. Prayer is not about gaining, it is about becoming. It is not about bending life to your will, but about letting your will bend toward life as God has written it. When you pray, you begin to see that destiny is not a stone wall, immovable and cold. In Sufi understanding, destiny is the meeting of infinite possibilities, all known by God, yet only one realized in you. Your prayer is one of those possibilities, a thread woven into the eternal fabric. Thus, prayer does not cancel destiny, it is destiny. It is the unfolding of the script within your heart. And when that unfolding takes place, you discover that the purpose of prayer was never to change what God gives, but to change how you receive it. Prayer at its depth is not measured by results. It is not weighed by what appears in your hands after you raise them. It is lived in intention, in surrender, in the posture of the heart before its Lord. Sometimes God grants, sometimes He withholds. But even the withholding is a gift, though it does not feel like one at first. For in the withholding, He teaches patience. In the delay, He stretches your chest wide enough to hold what is greater than you had asked. In the silence, He draws you deeper into yourself, where you discover that prayer was never about the object of desire. It was always about the transformation of the desirer. Prayer, in its essence, is not a shopping list. It is a mirror. Each supplication reflects your state, your longing, your hidden motives. Some prayers expose how much of the ego still lives in you, others reveal how much of you has been surrendered. In this way, prayer becomes a mirror through which God shows you who you are. The one who prays sincerely lays down ego, will and desire. He comes not to impose but to surrender. And when all is surrendered, what remains is not emptiness but readiness. Readiness to be filled, to be transformed, to be carried. This readiness is the true fruit of prayer. For when a servant realizes his powerlessness, he discovers the space where divine mercy begins. When the tongue falters and the heart trembles, when the self has no strength left to insist, the prayer becomes pure. It is no longer yours. It is His through you. And in that state, prayer ceases to be an act performed at fixed moments alone. It becomes a living current that runs through your being. You find yourself praying in silence, praying in waiting, praying in tears, praying in patience. Even your breath becomes prayer. This is the state of prayer, not a transaction to gain, but a transformation to become. It is less about what enters your hand and more about what enters your heart. Prayer is not a moment you visit, it is a path you walk. It is not a task you tick off, it is a state of being that deepens with every breath. Ibn Arabi teaches that prayer has no end, because longing has no end. As long as the human heart beats, it yearns. And as long as it yearns, it turns upward, outward, inward, toward the one who planted longing within it. Every prayer you make is a ripple across the ocean of your destiny. Sometimes it returns to you as a wave you can see, sometimes it disappears into the vastness. But whether you perceive its return or not, it has already transformed you in the act of being spoken. Do not think of prayer as a key to unlock treasures far away. Think of it as a flame that burns away the walls within. Each prayer clears a layer of dust, softens a knot of hardness, melts a fragment of ego, and slowly you find yourself standing clearer, lighter, more surrendered in the presence of the one who always heard you, even before you spoke. Prayer, in its endlessness, is both anchor and sail. It anchors you in humility, reminding you of your dependence. It also becomes your sail, carrying you across storms with trust. Even when the shore is unseen, and when the servant prays enough, long enough, deep enough, he begins to realize the prayer itself is the answer. The kneeling was the gift. The tears were the response. The surrender was the treasure. What you sought outside was given inside, quietly, secretly, until you awaken one day and realize you are living in the prayer you once made. Thus, the journey of prayer does not close with an answer. It opens into infinity. It ends only when the soul returns to the one it always prayed to. And even then, the echoes of your supplications continue to live, written in the eternal script, resonating beyond time. Prayer is endless because God is endless, and the one who prays becomes endless in longing, endless in love, endless in surrender.